Hello, Gordon. So you like to terrorize Metro cops, huh?
What?
You think you can just skirt the law, run around, kill us, shoot us when we're standing next to barrels? You monster.
Huh?
So I'd like to play a game.
What kind of... I don't understand.
In Daddy's day he walked to school and lived his life by the golden rule and chopped down timber for his fuel. In Daddy's day his shoes were made by Buster Brown. He'd hide and roll his knickers down. The world was square, it wasn't round. In Daddy's day he'd ride the Toonerville trolley, the Toonerville trolley, tooting on his licorice stick. The Toonerville trolley, the Toonerville trolley, that was how he got his kicks. Oh, by gee, by gosh, by golly, life to him was oh so jolly. Dad would have new teeth, the Toonerville trolley.
Get me out of here! We have to get out of the room! We have to get out of the room! No! Crawl in here! Crawl in here! Can't we crawl in here? That's too small!
Time marches on, and so does the anti-science team. Welcome back to the HLVRAI over-analysis series, where I think too hard about an improv show and pick a title that's way too hard to pronounce. Act 2 had some pretty great character moments, and if you have seen the first two parts of the series, you should have a general idea how this part is also going to go when it comes to the kind of layout that we've been doing so far. With that being said, there is a lot of differences with this act. More so, there's not a lot of character stuff I can analyze this time around. Not that there isn't stuff there, but more so a full-on character analysis section wouldn't be very fruitful. So instead, a lot of it will be talked about in the main summary section, and a new section has been added to kind of make up for that fact. With that being said, if you haven't seen the previous parts I just mentioned, you can see them on my channel or on a dedicated playlist that exists now. It should be in the description, if I remember to put it there. Make sure to throw rocks at me if I forgot to put it in the description. Anyways, without further ado, let's get back to the recap and my general thoughts on Act 2 of HLVRAI 2.
We get it! We did it!
You have made it to the other side of the puzzle.
Oh, Stain!
All right.
If I had to make an argument for who the main character of Act 2 is, it's definitely Stain, hence the thumbnail choice. Not only does he serve as the focal point to many scenes, but he has a legitimate arc and growth throughout the act. That being said, the other characters end up having some good spotlight moments as well as the main anti-science team, which, as of the description, is the official name of the group now. The main act begins with Gordon waking up in the same bed as Stain, don't worry about it, and the confirmation of three things. One, it has been multiple days, weeks even, as Gordon posits later, since Act 1 in-universe. Not only does this play into the theme of the game, going on without Gordon, but it shows that the time between the acts may have larger time skips than in the original series. Other than being an obvious joke, but, Anyways, Czar doesn't sleep. In fact, he doesn't do a lot of things in this act, including being able to levitate through water and also not dying. He is kind of using the Vortessence way more than in Act 1, and I have to wonder if this is set up for anything specific, or if it's just, more linked to him being a Vortigaunt. And of course, 3, both Gordon and Chris have gotten sick in the sewer, as the only two humans there apart from Grigori, who is not sick.
Because I am nice.
Through the act, the anti-science team goes through the root canal and water hazard chapters of Half-Life 2, with them ending at Black Mesa East. The chapters, namely Water Hazard, had been shrunk down from multiple segments being cut, which is probably a good call. Nevertheless, the main conceit, as mentioned before, is Stain seeing the outside world for the first time, with him dying many times. All of which are set to the game over screen from Metal Gear Solid 3, which may have more to it than meets the eye as a bit. We'll get into it later. Anyways, the first half of the act, up until the airboat, follows more chaotic scrambling of the characters and acts as a sort of interesting mirror to Act 1 and 2 of the original series, with Act 2 of HLVRAI 1 being less chaotic and when compared to the purely unscripted Act 1. And this seems to be kind of the opposite, with Act 1 being set up and Act 2 being more of the chaos that we had come to expect out of these acts. Some notable bits include the fact that lines burrow, Stain knows what Prince of Persia is, and Gordon punches a wall. We also see Additional again, who now has to call Gordon Mr. instead of Doctor because of Chris. In this section, which is an experiment of Czar's to see if people can survive a room full of explosive barrels, we get to see them go across a pit of water, and then we see this.
We've made it to the other side of the puzzle.
Oh, Stain.
All right,
What
get 'em.
Do you see that? Here it is again. There. With the sound effect, you can see a spectral, shadowy skeleton flying across the room. This is big, as this is our first time seeing a skeleton in the series, which is obviously important in the context of Henry. Earlier, Stain mentioned having skulls pop out of him too, but back to the skeleton. The effect, interesting enough, mirrors Alex's from the end of the Gnome run, which occurred when a cloaked player had a light shown on them, which showed their shadow despite being cloaked. This could mean that technically the skeleton was an accident like Alex was back during the filming, of maybe one of the stagehands or people behind the scenes being cloaked and then their shadow being shown. But the sound effect and the fact it wasn't cut shows some deeper intent. I also don't think it's meant to be playing into Stain's sewer being haunted, since it's the first thing we see related to this act, and it's far from his home. And another thing that happens later shows that whatever it is, it's seemingly unrelated to that. Commenters also pointed out that the spooky steps and moans from the tunnel are actually two of the 7 wonders from Twilight Town and Kingdom Hearts 2, being a reference to that, so oops. My bad. I forgot. Anyways, the skeleton is important, is what I'm saying. Even if it was an accident, it seems to be set up. During the next section, Bobby calls it. Let me just say, the rad pop-up is a reused asset from Wayne's streams, but oh my god, is it great. Also called it, or whatever, with rad being important. Put it on my tombstone, I guess. When Bubby calls, the suit is also updated with an awesome boot-up segment, with a chiptune cover of Big Papa by Biggie, which calls back to the previous episode where he said he has gone by
the notorious B.U.B.
This gives Gordon sticky candy hands, and he can climb. This makes me wonder how many power-ups he might get throughout the series, or how useful this will be at all. I also have to wonder if this is meant to be kind of used if he ever falls off the map, like in Half-Life 1. Since, you know, they don't have Dr. Kuma around, so they can use his extendo arms as a MacGuffin. They find a radio there, and Stain murders his first innocent. Truly, this is a perfectly fitting replacement for the science team. During this segment, Gordon is temporarily locked in stasis. In reality, it seems that Wayne's headset might have been unplugged or something, since we hear the Windows unplug noise happen. I wonder if this is like a state one enters when you take off the headset as the avatar is just frozen in place, like in-universe, I mean. Or maybe he was frozen by Tommy. The fact that this is kept in means that it might be brought up later. Off-screen, Stain also gets picked up by a vulture, and head crabs have been dubbed ants. I wonder if this means ant lions will be called something else, like a sort of crab or crustacean. During the airboat segment, Czar falls off when we get an answer to the whole cock hero segment, as yes, that was Czar, and yes, he respawned. It seems unlike the other AIs that we see die and come back, he sees his death as a kind of like dream or vision. This could be because of the vortescence being a semi-hive mind, or maybe some strange non-Euclidean time thing with Czar, but overall it seems like some interesting Vortigaunt weirdness, with his whole thing specifically. He could arguably be the most powerful member of the current team, to be honest. Speaking of power, we see Grigori use the power of God to levitate things, so, that's cool. As they ride the green bean towards greener pastures, they are stopped at Station 7, where the 2 Metrocops from before come back, and man, am I glad I guessed that they would be, like, more relevant. But there was no way in hell I would have guessed they were going to put Gordon into a saw trap. We get a name for at least one of them as the Metrocops in this scene, the one played by Mira specifically, aka the one whose APC got hit is named 14, or I guess designated 14. Either way, I don't believe we get a name for Mike's Metrocop, unfortunately, but these two kind of act as like a Team Rocket duo mixed with Forzen in a way. Unfortunately, they might be dead, but whatever, they could always come back, come on. During the boat section, they do reach one of the cutoff points. However, Grigori instead decides to fucking clean house as he uses the power of God to decimate the Combine outpost. Regarding what Grigori says in Latin, it is, "I will die so that I can open the great door of the airship," according to Google Translate. If that's wrong, let me know, people from, countries that speak Latin. Ancient Rome or Vatican City. This brazen act of self-destruction is more foreshadowing of Grigori's possible death at Ravenholm, along with his apparent death a little bit later. As we have a quick break before the Rebel outpost, where they get a gun. we learn of Christmas Village. It seems to be real and not Czar being weird, since Mossman mentions that later, so elves are real. Write this down, it'll be on the test. Also, something, elves like gnomes and Slumpth Elf. There's a brief moment where Stain goes rogue here, but it's cool. We also see Czar use a 20 sign he collected earlier to make a go button, which makes things go. It's really the only major appearance of the 20 sign throughout this act, so I thought I'd mention it. It's possible maybe they cooled down on it after people started hyper-focusing on it. That's at least my best bet. As they move forward, they get an upgrade to the airboat, but more importantly, additional dies. Now he comes back, so it's fine, but the anger Chris has here is just more fuel to the possible traitor fire. I also haven't mentioned it to this point, but Stain getting on his knees for treats is, I feel like no matter what adjective I use to describe it, it'll sound bad, so let's just go with Stain as a dog and move on. We get more Braincast stuff when we find out the Hunter Choppers are also piloted by the Metrocops duo, who proceed to absolutely get demolished by the anti-science team as they get airboats from somewhere. The green effect, along with the sound effect, could kind of imply that it was meant to be Czar in the scene who did it, but Gordon asks and Czar says no, so it could be from a different source like Tommy, or maybe another Vort we have yet to meet, or maybe Czar's doing it subconsciously. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a classic no and of, you know, the RTVS style of improv, but still could be worth noting. Speaking of the Metrocops, though, while the first chopper explodes, the second one just kind of poofs out of existence. This could make me think it could be leaving the door open for a possible return, but it's a bit too early to tell. Even still, software AIs are known to be able to come back from some pretty dangerous situations, so there's a possibility they'll be fine. We get more Chris betrayal shadowing, and I am not crazy, and then probably one of the most somber scenes this series has had yet. Stain, for the first time in his life, sees a sunset. The end of his first day truly being part of a larger world. A day filled with violence and agony suddenly melts away in the view of nature in its purest state. Proof that despite the hard conditions of this world, and how the Combine have crushed it under heel, it can heal. And because of that, he doesn't want to leave. But upon finding out that beauty isn't going anywhere, he knows he wants to see more. Even if it's dangerous, and even if it hurts. Insanely poignant for a fucking Half-Life comedy series. I have no clue if this was planned moment from Scorpy or spur of the moment thing, but it's such a good bookend to Stain's arc throughout this act, and it's legitimately awesome. Not to mention the original score by Mike. In fact, all the original music throughout has been great, but this score called I Want to See More is just such a perfect emotional beat for this scene. It's just, mwah, chef's kiss. Italian finger sucking. Gordon also pats Stain's head. Just wanted to note that. But also, a different thing happens a little bit later. As Gordon goes to open the gate, he sees it again. The corpse from the sewer having followed them. This time it makes the exact same screech as the skeleton, which creates some worrying implications for it. Gordon calls it a devil here, so I guess that's its name. The devil. Sure. It appears a little later after the robot Yuri and a big gunfight as it runs behind Stain. This one actually scared me during the stream, it's so needlessly freaky. The skeleton and corpse being connected has some very interesting ties, as it ties the corpse back to Benry directly, which of course has worrying implications no matter where you stand on it, on Benry's fate post Half-Life 1, I mean. Of course, you could use the connection of Stain and the corpse being seen in the same area, being proof for Benry equals Stain theory, but it could also be unrelated, or because Stain is of a similar power level rather than being one-to-one literally Benry. Similar to the first series, them following Gordon has some very unclear motivations for the time being, and it's probably the biggest driving narrative force that's simmering underneath the surface when compared to the actual main plot, other than the whole girl stuff going on. Stain also almost gets executed, which is, fun, and Gordon struggles to calm a friend, which is interesting. I wonder if Gordon's general kind of reluctance to call Stain a friend comes from his general detachment to the AIs. Obviously, Coomer is important to him, but it's another reminder that he is playing a game, and his loyalty is still a little fickle with him ignoring Coomer's wishes of being put into another game with the science team. We then proceed to get probably the biggest boon to my betrayal theory, this line from Czar.
I had a terrible thought about being betrayed by a good friend.
What do you mean by this, Czar? What do you mean by this? Why are you putting this right before Black Mesa East, the part of the game where you're betrayed by Mossman in the base game? What are you talking about? Now, to be fair, this could still be referring to Mossman, who's introduced soon after, but putting the anti-science guy into a lab seems like a really, really bad idea. We also get a photo op with a food suit, and Darnold gets angry at Bubby, which I cannot imagine Darnold angry. It's kind of hard to visualize. I guess it'd be like when he got told about the Pyro update. Once inside, we meet Mossman, played by Penny Snapcube. She puts everyone under a decontamination process, and they are put to sleep.
Good night.
Honestly, the more simple plot of this act makes character analysis a bit of more of a simple play. Since we know the cast and the general faction work at play, we should at least update C.R.A.G.S.S, right? But yeah, this thing is a bit nasty, am I right? Hold on, let me just... There. Much better. I've completely redesigned C.R.A.G.S.S from the ground up to still show the ideas that I wanted to show. On the left we have the Resistance with Darnold, Bubby, Mossman, and additional. And then on the right we have the Combine with currently just Dr. Breen. If you wanted to include them, the Overwatch would also be there. Then on the anti-science team, we have here in the middle, Gordon, Chris, Stain, Grigori, and Czar. Each of the main factions are still linked out to each other with the deciding colors, and the interpersonal dynamics are also linked within the groups themselves. For instance, Chris's general dislike for Gordon. Czar has pretty handedly kind of lightened up on Gordon. That's why I removed the dislike, but it could come back next act. We'll see. As for why Czar has the teal arrow, it's because...
He gets me!
No, he does.
He gets me!
Along with this, both Coomer, Tommy, and Alex have all been put outside the group dynamics, as they're kind of their own independent agents, while keeping their links still relatively similar to how they were before. Overall, I think this is a much more clearer diagram, and if you wanted to throw some characters like the Metro Cops or like Leonard, you can still throw them into their various factions without too much of a hassle. Also, I didn't put them on here, but the food suit would also be under anti-science team, and you can put like, I don't know, a pink line for them for Yuri. With all that being said, interestingly enough, the three characters I have in kind of the miscellaneous area of Alex, Coomer, and Tommy all are missing from this act. Tommy makes sense, he's in the background doing G-Man stuff. But Coomer obviously also has an alibi of the whole stuck in Combine Super Hell jail, but Alex is a bit more questionable. It seems like mainly she's going around the route that Alex does in the canon game, hence why she's not like existing around the different areas we see in this specific act. I just felt it was still worth noting that her absence is felt. Oh, hi. Welcome to my study. Thank you for joining me here at GM_cabin_cave_remaster. Since the character analysis section was lacking, I figured we'd take a long break here. I might as well use your time wisely by discussing comments in my comment corner. Wait, this feels weird, right? Like there's this empty chair where like I should be, like, perspectively. Hold on, let me just, There, just, imagine, like, a cool Sona or, like, character or something there. You know, like it's supposed to be me. There, where the green is. There, on the chair, where the green is. Anyway, comments! You all left a lot of them, and this felt like a great idea to showcase some interesting theories I don't exactly want to put my stock in. Through this series, I've somehow carved out a kind of corner that no one else is really filling very much, and I feel a little bit bad about that. So I figured rather than trapping myself in an echo chamber where I just got the same theory at the wall, I should probably give some other voices a shot to see if maybe you think their analysis is a bit better than mine, and also my general thoughts on them, because my video. First off, we have a theory proposed by @LadyLenora on Twitter, but was sent to me by iDecide on Discord. If you're wondering where my Discord is, shh, it's a secret. I mean, you can find it, just don't be weird, and don't use it to try and get into the video, okay? Anyways, this details Benry and Stain's relation, not as Stain being Benry, but Benry being Stain, if that makes sense. Rather than assuming Stain is Benry post-loss, it states that Stain is actually Benry pre-HLVRAI, who somehow gets sent back in time to the events of HLVRAI as a kind of paradox. Basically, since time travel does exist through Act 4 of HL1, theoretically it could return. Top of this, it could make Benry's memories of Gordon be real. His whole memories of being Stain, being close to him, and specifically the idea of what he was mentioning about how he used to be best friends with Gordon, and how they'd play in the mud. Maybe it's a legitimate, actual memory of the time of HLVRAI 2. It would also make things just overall much more tragic, wouldn't it? We also have this moment from Act 4, which was never actually fully explained.
I don't know.
Benry, did you do something?
Timelines crossing.
What? The timelines are crossing?
So there is precedent of weird time stuff happening outside of our purview. That also means that Stain traveled not through the game's relative time, but rather through our real-world time too, which might be a bit hard to swallow for some, but as per the Origin to AI, we are dealing with some occult eldritch shit, so time travel isn't too unbelievable. As the final nail in the legitimacy, we kind of have the choice of game over screen that Wayne chose. The game over screen for Stain is from Metal Gear Solid 3, a prequel to its two predecessors where if you kill Ocelot during a story section, you get a unique game over screen where the text rearranges into time paradox if you wait long enough. Metal Gear Solid 3's game over having that specific Easter egg and being used by Stain is fucking nuts to me. Also, it's kind of still a bit of a reach. I mean, I don't know if this is just brain rot from watching, like, top 10 craziest Easter eggs in video game videos from when I was a kid, but I feel like that's a pretty known Easter egg when linked to that specific game over screen from that specific game. So, yeah. Even still, it's kind of a dangerous basket for me to put my eggs in, hence the comment corner use of it rather than just me dropping it in the middle of the video like a bombshell. I think it's really cool nonetheless, and we should probably keep our eye on it, as it seems like a kind of twist that they would go for if everyone assumes that Benry and Stain are going to be connected, instead making it the opposite, if that also tracks. Next is another Stain theory comment, this time by many people, is that Stain is actually Joshua, Gordon's son. Okay, so this one I honestly don't get as much. Timeline matches up, yeah, and a lot of it is down to Gordon's dynamic with Stain being strangely paternal, at least I'd imagine. With Gordon not meaning Wayne, that also allows Joshua and Joshy, Wayne's kid, to be separate too. Stain is also clearly not human, which could be because he's technically part player, but that implies that he'd be made using Gordon's DNA somehow. Also, a line I imagine is linked back to this is the line of Gordon saying,
I knew this was gonna be hard.
Look how you make him.
Which does go unexplained. I figured it meant returning to the game, but others think it means he knows Stain's original form, and by that logic it could technically be his son, hence the difficulty. While this has narrative potential, I can't really see it personally. But hey, if you're Joshua Stain truther, sound off in the comments. I'm sure I missed whatever it is that really makes this theory, since so many people commented it. Next is from @Spellbound, who says Stain is Forzen. Yes. This is good. No notes. Another common theory, moving on from Stain, is that Alex is weird because she is an empty vessel from Half-Life Alyx. And furthermore, she can't talk because the gnome muted her lines in the previous game. That's cool, I like that. Right now, there's so much in the air with Alex that it could literally be anything, but I am leaning towards whatever hurt Alex being prior to the events of the gnome run, due to the whole gnome refusing to refer to her, along with the whole song at the end of the mind thing. It seems like that's directly related to her apparent madness. I say madness because I assume that's what happened, but otherwise, whatever occurred to irrevocably harm her in a way that Peppa describes shows that it's probably related to something else. That being said, it could technically be multiple things at once, like multiple different things happened to her which led her to this specific state, and maybe the gnome was like a final breaking point, or maybe even a kind of lapse in her power, considering she hasn't really done much so far. A detail I neglected to mention as well is that the Peppa Pig movie is now publicly available. See, it was an unlisted video on Wayne's channel to play in the theater, however, it has now been added to the End of the Gnome Run playlist, which means that the information in there is definitely something we need to keep an eye on, as it's likely going to play further into the whole scenario, well, as a whole. So it seems like that's probably going to be more so the origin of her, rather than her being muted in-game earlier in said playthrough. But still not a bad explanation, and I could see it being partially correct. Finally, our last theory, but nevertheless a fun one, is from Mikola, who posits that Azar is actually Coomer's ex-wife. This works way more than it may seem at a first glance. Obviously we know that Coomer's wife looks like a Vortigaunt, and could technically be one by that point. And Cheese points out that Coomer's wife encouraged his career into science rather than fighting, which could fit with Zar's love for inventing. I think this idea is awesome, since I do think Coomer's wife is going to return in some way, and that could be it for all we know. We'll have to see, I guess, when/if the two interact. It's a bit of a crack theory, but then again, with something like this, crack theories are probably just as legitimate as regular theories, and I think it would be very, very funny. And that was Act 2. Finally, am I right? Sorry this took me so long. If you've seen my community post, you know I had to re-record this entire video from the ground up. I didn't have to re-edit everything, since I still had the project file, so all the actual specific granular edits and images I had and all that was still on my computer, but I lost all of the audio. Yay! Basically, I had submitted the actual full video into YouTube, and an error occurred where for some reason it wiped the video. So, yeah. Keep backups of your final videos before you put them on YouTube. Although, in my defense, I did have like 32 megabytes left and I had to bring up space. With that being said, the entire video itself is, maybe a little bit rushed. This is actually a much tighter recording compared to the previous one. I think it's a couple minutes less. So sorry if you're expecting something a little bit longer. Act 2 I really just didn't have too much to say on. There's a lot of juicy details, but for the most part, it's kind of us falling into like a comfortable rhythm. We don't really have too much stuff to gnaw on when it comes to the main, like, overarching behind-the-scenes plot, and that's not really a complaint either. This series is a comedy series at the end of the day, and it's fucking funny, so who am I to complain, right? I also want to do a brief update on some of the stuff I mentioned in my 1,000 subscriber video, which also, if you didn't see that, I hit 1,000 subscribers. Thank you all very much. It means a lot to me. The video itself is already out of date, since one of the projects I planned on working on, the Deltarune related stuff, is going to be, a bit complicated by the fact that Chapter 5 is coming out next week, which makes it a bit difficult for me to, you know, make Deltarune content that's up to date. The 3+4 video is getting scrapped. Same thing with my theory video, which is being shelved. But don't worry, for those of you who are excited for possible Deltarune content, I will be making it still. It's just gonna wait for Chapter 5. On top of that, Act 3 has been pushed back. If you haven't seen, because you weren't at the livestream or Wayne's Community tab, basically there were some issues with VR mod and other hardware issues involving internet connections, which were not solvable during the time of the recording. We ended up getting around 30 minutes of Act 3, which were great, and already had a lot of interesting details that I'm already thinking about. And I made sure not to include them in this revised version of the video. Since that's not out yet, I don't know what's being cut, I don't know what's being changed, etc. So, yeah, if you go into the comments telling me, hey, by the way, Mossman's name is wrong, you didn't watch this part of the video, so I got you, I guess. With that being said, thank you again for watching, and thank you for putting up with the wait in between these two uploads. Hopefully you'll be able to see more of me in the time coming with some more various stuff. But again, if you haven't watched that 1,000 subscriber special, HLVRAI content is not going anywhere. Just because I'm going to be making other stuff doesn't mean I'm going to stop making RTVS related stuff. So don't worry about that. I will see you guys next time after Act 3. So, be scared, zombies are coming for you.
I need a gun.
I'll get rid of it.
I need a fucking gun. No,